in some of that dialogue, I think there are some real issues. I think that young bodies that are still growing sometimes don't know what they want or who they are. And if there's pressure to transition from a peer group, I worry sometimes that maybe people are getting pressure at too young an age to make a decision about that makes sense.
You know, particularly when we start talking about trans in relationship to trends, is trans a choice, and is this a choice that young folks make because it's a cool and hip thing to do right now? Again, at the beginning of this sort of trans visibility arc, people would talk about the difference between a primary transsexual and a secondary transsexual. And the primary transsexual was somebody who had, from a very early age, shown signs of cross-identification that was deep and unchanging. And the primary transsexual became the model for, you know, this sort of early F to M stuff. The secondary transsexual was somebody who had a weaker cross-identification, but who was open to the possibility of transition to the extent that the technology was available, you know, and the technology has not always been available. So now the question is, like 10, 15 years later, technology is available, hormones are available, social service providers are pushing certain forms of identification. Where does choice play in?
To have all these things at your fingertips and to be able to explore that, I think, is wonderful. To find, you know, say, oh my God, am I really supposed to be a man? Is this who I am? But to not take the time to live in this body and know this body. You do not know your body at 18. I don't care.
I will say that had somebody come to me when I was 19 and very vulnerable, and I hadn't had a lot of sex at 19. I don't know about people today, but I hadn't had any good sex, and I was very uncomfortable with my body. But here's the problem: most girls, people raise girls, are uncomfortable with their body. You don't get through female adolescence thinking, wow, I love my body. It's not a possibility. So when you're 19 and someone comes to you and you anyway have any kind of cross-identification, they say, do you want to go on T? Someone says that to me at 19, yes, I'm on it. Absolutely, I would have gone on it, because it would have seemed like the answer to my problems. Clearly, we're not here to judge people. You know, obviously, that just goes without saying. But for people who haven't been sexual yet, and I know that we're talking about gender identity and not sexual identity, but we also know that we come to understand ourselves as gendered through some of our sexual practices, and our sexual practices are deeply gendered. For people who haven't been really sexual, I think this stuff is really premature. I guess I do think that.